From the bonuses of episode 0, we're able to learn that the economy in Of the Devil's setting is not too good. London outright says a whole generation of youth knew they wouldn't have a home, and how he can't even afford a pet despite his tenure. You can also piece together plenty from how Diane was said to be headhunted for work in genetic research, and yet her and Carlos were still living in a pretty cramped apartment. The only person who seems to be on the up and up is Morgan, who's able to pay a 2,999 credit fine for smoking in an interrogation room. It isn't great for even people in specialized fields or people far into their career. But what about somebody who is your average Joe? Somebody who went through school but needs to get into the workforce immediately for one reason or another? This question is actually answered in the Spooktober VN Jam 2023 Grand Prize winner, Model Employee. Before you're able to even enter your first input, you're barraged with a lot to take in. Your HUD has a wealth of present information. Pertinently, there's the time and date, which read as June 28th, 2086, about 3 weeks since the last Heartbreak murder. And if you look down to the Trending Now segment, you can even catch the Heartbreak killings trending at 77.8k posts. You can also spot other interesting topics like legalize Nirvana, Nobel Industry Weekend, and banging is queer? The other elements of this HUD include the weather, your mental music playlist, 2 different sets of buttons for the log, saving, settings, auto, your condition, your energy level, and 2 bank balances showing you're almost broke. The first thing you actually see in your point of view is an old man waking you up at the bus stop. As soon as he makes sure you're alright, an automated voice announces he doesn't have a bus ticket, so he must vacate the premises or the cops will be called. He apparently had a ticket, but his phone died, so I guess the system can't detect it. No one seems to care, and eventually sirens start blaring. He steps out into the rain to stop bothering everyone, and you follow him to say you'll pay for his tickets. Unfortunately, you are now actually broke. Past that even. You are now overdrafted. Looking into the environment, you can see a similar cityscape like the one outside the police station of episode 0. This mishmash of building elements and lights. The primary color being this orange with brown and bright red, white, and even purple elements doesn't exactly feel inviting or comfortable. You explain how you were going to a job interview, which would make sense given your finances. The old man offers a sandwich and you graciously accept, wolfing it down for a good 10% energy. He also notes how you look out of it, with you telling how you just got out of the hospital after getting modded. You can't offer much, but he does give you some words of affirmation, supplying you with another 10% energy. At the same time, you get an overdraft notification. They ask if you're distressed or need financial responsibility counseling. A bit passive-aggressive, to be honest. The bus is already gone, and you're standing in front of a warehouse of the online retailer Tethys. They're always hiring. This is a really amazing opening scene. So much to read about the state of the world, the way both ends of the generations are screwed over by technology in different ways. Apathy or even maliciousness towards your fellow man seems the default. Corporate control is so ingrained that even just standing in a bus stop requires you to drop cash or be connected to their system. With every part of the world around you so uncaring and abrasive, even towards the slightest faltering, it doesn't leave much hope for any beneficial outcomes. Luckily, after you get rainwater splashed on you, you get to have a simple text-based job interview. After some weirdly doting notes from the interviewer, and needing to spin how you were a child and didn't have any work history, you explain how your mod surgery wasn't really your choice due to an accident. It is strange that they know this considering they want to have access to your medical information due to the HIPAA Act, if that's still around. Doesn't really matter either way, since you apparently shared your medical crumbs on the Tethys website when you applied. While your mod wasn't gained completely voluntarily, Tethys is a mod-friendly workplace that will upgrade it through reward plans. No, you cannot opt out of this. You answer why you want to work for Tethys, and are asked to provide a portrait of yourself, letting you choose whether this game will be Yuri or not. Your interviewer, for some reason, doesn't know your name despite it being on your resume. The resume she noted had your contact info at the top of the page. You can then enter Bailey's first name for a bit of self-insertion if you wish. You get the job, and your interviewer drops a typo at the last second, making you question if you've actually been talking to a person this whole time. This tells us something very important about automated dependents, or ads. They're so prevalent in daily life that the assumption is that you're not talking to a real human being for basic, repetitive work, even if you have an extensive conversation. With that, if Morgan was being at least a little snippy with the desk cat at the police station, the cast talks about how discouraged people are by androids. You can see firsthand how disinterested people are by basic chatbots. Once you're done, you get on the train to the warehouse proper and pass out again, meeting your first co-worker, Maya, when you wake up. You chat a bit about what led you to working at this wonderful job of moving boxes. Out the window, you can even see what looks to be the canopy. While we don't get an actual great look at the canopy of the city, through the blog Your Night Owl, a Tumblr blog written from the perspective of a person in the OTD setting, we do get an image and description of the canopy. It's a little terrifying to imagine looking up and seeing this mega structure hanging over you. I'm not going to go in depth into Your Night Owl since it's a long Tumblr blog, but you should check it out. It's a fun read that gives a unique perspective on different topics outside of Morgan's specific purview, and gives nice sneak peeks to different subjects that may or may not appear in future episodes. You can read about amazing things like how one of the Heartbreak Killer's victims was used in an advertisement after her death, and all the fallout from that. And also, the things you're seeing in the background isn't the canopy, it's just the inside of the Tethys Warehouse. Once you're actually inside, you're made to buy the employee handbook for a whole 2,000 credits. Maya thankfully spots you. As you can see, there's also bottles of some kind of yellow liquid around the shelves. It's piss. And Tethys is an analog to Amazon. Tethys is the mother goddess of the river gods in Greek mythology. One of the largest rivers in the world is the Amazon. Amazon is named after the Amazon. Tethys could also be tied to typhus phonetically, with typhus being a Greek word meaning hazy or smoky to describe the state of delusion people with typhus diseases are in. Maya says you'll be shadowing her for the first day, and also guided by the warehouse's own
Penny!
She's not an AI, as AIs are illegal at this point. Instead, she has a
personalized employee neural network interface. And if that sounds like a mouthful, I'll let you in on a little secret. I came up with the name first and the acronym second.
Unless you're modded, you need special gear to actually see her. At the same time, she is always listening and can chime in through the speakers, or directly into your head, if you call for her. She is very charming and kind of flirty, like, immediately, but she's there to help mod users like you. She also explains the infraction system, where if you get written up 3 times, you get fired. You get your first infraction within a few minutes for stepping over hazard line. Penny and Maya try to play it off as not so bad for you. 88% of employees get their first infraction in their first week. Maya does say that Penny is a machine, so she can put things gently or tell white lies, but if you ask her to speak honestly, she will. She also gives you a caffeinated lollipop she had to get you back up on your feet, which is a little unhygienic, so Penny makes you throw it away. It's the gesture that counts. And you manage to get another infraction 2 hours later somehow. Maya decides to be nice and take it for you since you are under her supervision. Penny tries to protest and almost guilt trip Maya for it, but she doesn't really care. Once your shift is over, she introduces you to the dorms and the rest of the game's cast. You've got the laid-back Scotch, the skittish Riley, your asshole supervisor Sharp, and passive-aggressive Donna. She also takes you to the company-provided dorm room. When she's gone, Penny barges in without even asking, calling you pet names like Champ and Baby. The public domain seems to be the basis of a lot of her language model, even if it's 70 years out of date. Even then, that'd have to be in the early turn of the century, not the 1950s. Though she does also say she can change anything about herself for you, again clarifying that she's not an AI, just a machine.
A pretty simple machine at that. All I can do is receive an input and then put out.
She remarks that she's there to help the lives of employees, and asks you what you want. You reply you want to get a new watch for Maya since hers seems to be broken. Penny checks Maya's Tethys wish list and finds she wants a pretty expensive one. One you can't afford. Fear not, you get your paycheck for the day of a grand 6,000 credits, which your bank takes all of to cover your overdrafting and fees. Fear not, again, Tethys is going to reward hard work with compensation. Apparently. Ugh. You finally get to sleep after a hard day. This, going forward, is the loop of the game. You work your shift, hang out with your coworkers, and have a nice talk with Penny. Since we've met everyone, I'd like to give some time to appreciate the game's character designs. Maya is pretty casual. She wears overalls, a cap, and a graphic tee. Of note, though, is the weightlifting belt she wears. It shows her experience towards her job that she'd have specialized clothing designed for lifting. Similarly, the solid darker green and the stripe on Riley's pants and skirt resembles a tracksuit. She is a lot less put together than Maya, though, being covered in scrapes, band-aids, scuffs on her clothing, and her hair in disarray. She does have a maid man tee, so she's got some style going on. Donna seems way overdressed compared to these two, wearing a dress and a blazer. She probably isn't doing too much direct physical labor compared to everyone else. Scotch is better off, I guess, but he has his own problems. His clothes are baggy, all his bracelets and his ID and headphones are all tangled together. He's bound to get caught on or tangled in something eventually. He is chill, he won't give you too much of a headache compared to Sharp. Sharp is a really interesting design to me. His oversized gold mod arm contrasts hard against the rest of him. It makes him feel so disconnected to his other coworkers as he doesn't have the same limited color palette of most of the cast. Everyone else has a small sample of colors used in their designs while also sharing some colors to create a cohesion between them. He doesn't even have the same use of color like with Scotch or Riley for some fantastical skin tones. He's just some guy. At the same time, despite how much his face animates in his sprites, he looks stiff, like he doesn't actually have much personality or attitude to show off. From this, I'd say there's 2 points to possibly make based on the designs of the cast. One is that Sharp is largely disconnected from the rest of his workers. He doesn't mesh well with them, and even through his body language you can tell he's unenthused around them, reflecting his distance as a supervisor. And 2 is that this isn't a literal view of these coworkers as much as this is Bailey's summation of them. When you meet new people you're going to be around a lot but won't have much time to connect with, you're likely going to boil down a lot of their personality subconsciously. Riley is skittish, so she's going to shrink herself down. Maya is experienced and confident, so she's going to have a solid stance. Scotch is laid back and unserious, so he's going to have a lot of low energy ways of expressing. Sharp doesn't have that because he's your boss. He's the guy who's going to be scrutinizing you and who your future is dependent on, so you really don't have the same opportunity to reduce him in your mind. As a result, he'll look less eccentric and more normal. You might have noticed I skipped over Penny and Bailey's designs, and that's simply because there's a lot to talk about with the former, and I'll get to it when it'd be more fitting. Moving on to the next workday, Sharp and Donna supervise and micromanage you. Once you're off, you get paid a whole 6,200 credits. I don't know what's worse, a whole day at work at Tethys being worth only 2 smoking fines, or a smoking fine being so bad it's worth half a day of work at Tethys. You want to hang out with your coworkers, however, at the moment you're drained, and that would be considered a form of emotional labor, according to Penny. She is willing to give you the mod upgrades that were mentioned to help you out. With it, some of your shoulder pain is gone and you have some new clarity. But, okay, she says you can't mess with the HUD until you're fully paid off, yet at the same time she can change it for you. And the way she messes with the HUD glitches your point of view. It doesn't exactly seem malicious at this point, and I don't see why some neural network would charge you for these later upgrades, so it's fine, I guess. The more concerning thing is that the mod that you got forced onto you was for your spine. If you needed it after an accident, it'd already be bad, but the fact that you now have all this bullshit thrown on top is so disheartening. Moving forward, on the 30th, you can now properly interact with your coworkers, or you can just head off to your room. For the sake of not bogging down the video, I'm going to be covering the significant free time events in different chunks. To start off, Sharp is kind of an asshole to you, but also reminisces about when he started out. Donna refers to herself in third person as a short-term verbal regression technique to relieve stress. It supposedly makes her feel 20 years younger, but also she jumps to correct herself immediately when she slips up. Then we have Scotch, who yaps about how everything is artificial, but then tells a story about how he tried to eat exclusively organic while running track in high school. It didn't have any real effect, so why the hell is he so uppity about artificiality when he has a personal anecdote about how the difference doesn't really matter? I guess it's just a constant that you'll have someone at your work way too confident in whatever they're talking about. When you go back to your dorm for the night, Penny is there waiting for you and calls you darling. It's a part of trying to give you a mental pick-me-up. You do have ways to do this through visiting the park or the pink rooms, but you could also just talk to her. She clarifies that talking to her specifically isn't a form of emotional labor. She will charge you for chats, which does make a bit of sense in a way.
You're not paying? It's because you're the product.
The next night, Penny also charges you to upgrade your mod spine to make it so that you can sleep less, but harder. On the 2nd of July, you're talking with Scotch about the high-speed trams that go by in the area. He gives some color-based way to remember, but Sharp cuts in to talk about how the colors mentioned are instead tied to positive connotations like Tethys bullshit recycling initiative. You also have a conversation with Riley and Penny about her tenets, or her priorities of machine learning. Worth noting that this was spurred on by Riley asking about her password and Penny saying that keeping employee data confidential is one of her tenets. Penny seems a bit annoyed that Riley wants to explain it for her, but her metaphor is pretty understandable. Tenets are mandatory codes that underlie all modern programming languages. They let you define a program's priorities, such that any machine learning they engage in grows from these priorities, not in spite of them. Penny does explain how she doesn't have the big three, but she can't harm humans and that
my directive is to make people smile.
After your shift, you try to use your newfound energy with other people, but they all seem to be busy. Penny brushes it off as you not being that close to them, and as a result, you're not going to rank high on their priorities. She can be there for you, though.
Little old me, I'm not doing nothing right now. I'm all yours. Don't you have to breathe, Bailey?
You get to vent a bit as she drains your bank account. On the topic of what you wanted to be when you grew up, you end up learning that even Penny wanted to be needed when she was less developed. Or more accurately, when you asked her to be honest, she wanted to be necessary. Since we've seen almost all the areas in the game, I do want to focus on them for a moment. Despite how the story is set almost entirely in a repetitive warehouse in a dorm room, the area design makes each location distinct. Through the use of color, small details, and even camera angles, each room has its own concept and feel. The initial warehouse has this purple color palette along with these shelves at looming angles and contrasting piss bottles. The place looks foreboding. The lobby area does look a bit comfy with the warm oranges and darker purples, but not too comfy with the Tethys logos on the walls. The green warehouse gives this feeling of being surrounded by techy hardware the way you view the shelves in these straight lines, trams speed past, and the association with computers the color green has. At last you have your dorm room. It feels overpowering yet hollow. The hot pink light coming from your window washes over everything in the room, and yet there's almost nothing for it to wash over. It's kind of a sad dwelling. The next morning is not a good one. Before you can even get on the floor, your bank demands a minimum payment for your medical debt, leaving you with 0 credits again. Maya tries to bring up referral programs as a way to get some cash fast, except you don't have anyone to refer to. So your only choice is to ask Sharp for more shifts. Maya tries going ahead and asking for you, and it doesn't work out. Somehow, asking him yourself turns out even worse as he goes on a tirade on how you aren't happy or committed enough to this job. You worry this criticism is leading to you getting fired, but Sharp says he's ripping into you because he sees your potential, while at the same time taking digs at Maya. He even slips that the whole mod-friendly workplace line from your interview was false. It's not that the workplace is friendly to modded workers, it's that they have a quota for non-modded workers. In your Night Owl, entry 22, Yoru talks about how Tethys gradually expanded their reach through the use of human workers while still making steady profits. This is in contrast to other megacorporations who expanded quickly through military contracts. Not to compare one megacorporation that will always chew up human life and spit it out to another, but I don't know which is worse. On one hand, you have megs like Howe Industries and Lot Quinn gambling to hit the top quickly and not entirely risking human workers in the process. Then on the other hand, you have Tethys, who is a human job provider, but it's only for the sake of a growth strategy. You try and call Sharp out on this disgusting view of his fellow worker, but you just end up mumbling to yourself. Your rates are dropping anyway, so you might as well just go back to work. Sharp, however, demands a handshake for having a business conversation. If your mood wasn't bad already, it's tanking. You try to give him a firm handshake as he derides you over it. Or that is until your arm is so firm it actually hurts him and you can't unclench. Your whole arm is numb. He wrenches his way out only to fly back, landing over the line and getting an infraction. Sharp tries to shift the blame onto you, but Penny isn't having any of it, and docks him for his bullying. She sends a report to HR to terminate him. He tries to plead with her, slamming his fist against the shelf in anger when she doesn't budge. As it turns out, he didn't just get his arm modded, he modded his brain and his bones. All for a company that'd be more than ready to throw him away as soon as he gets his 3rd strike. Penny then chooses to talk to him privately, which shocks him from whatever she says. His last words are turning to ask you something before a box falls and crushes him, killing him instantly. Penny can only act so flippantly as you skip forward to your dorm room, still shaken from witnessing this industrial accident and washing up Sharp's blood. You can't even really hold a solid conversation with Penny as she tries to console you. I don't think she's helping much. She transfers a big fat bonus of 100,000 credits into your bank and reframes Sharp's whole firing as some big company decision they were waiting to carry out. It's such a bold-faced lie, a cold reframing, and spilling so much of Sharp's reputation that it all feels absurd. She tries to make you look at the positives of your new funds and helping the company, but it all omits the fact that Sharp died in the process. When you ask if it was cheaper for him to die than get fired, she answers simply,
yes.
Though she won't tell you what they talked about before his death. Next day, you find his death was covered up and swept away. He's only said to have been fired and the bloodstains were scrubbed away. Penny hand waves this as her being the waste processing and camera systems.
I'd never erase the footage, of course, but if no one ever asked to see it, I have no reason to show it to them.
Even when you try to mention his death, Penny speaks directly into her brain to tell you that because Sharp wasn't an employee when his heart stopped, his death, by law and corporate policy, isn't work-related. Meaning, on top of all his disposability, he was fired within moments of getting a third infraction. It had to have been almost automatic. Penny goes the extra mile and talks you out of saying anything due to how it would come off and how it would strain you and Maya's relationship. You did watch her ex die right in front of you after all. Donna takes over his supervisor position and the workday moves on like he was never even there. Once your shift's done, you have enough energy to talk to your coworkers, but you're too anxious to even consider it. You instead run to your dorm and Penny, where you now have the option to shower, talk to Penny, or just go to bed. Scotch notices how on edge you are the next morning, and asks if you're on anything instead of taking a full face of reality. You answer no, you were kicked out of the hospital with your life turned inside out and expected to just keep walking. He then talks about using this
non-habit forming
stimulant that comes in the form of a neon pink gel called honey. For whatever reason, it's on tap. Other amenities like toilet paper and internet you're charged for, but not this. Now, you might think this is some extraordinary scenario for a cyberpunk dystopia, but there's already a prevalent reliance on illicit substances in blue-collar fields. According to a 2024 article by American Addiction Centers, 1 in 11 manufacturing workers have reported having a reliance on drugs or alcohol in the last year. Over doubling that, 1 in 5 food service workers reported using drugs in the last month. The heavy workloads, high-stress work, and little pay are some of the reasons workers turn to substance abuse to cope. But it's also worth combining this article with the environment of a different company in a different field. The office workspace company, WeWork, provided free beer and wine to employees up until 2018, when they slowly began limiting it and then phasing it out. WeWork was willing to let their employees get plastered at work as a benefit, even if it resulted in harm to other employees, such as women being accosted by intoxicated male coworkers who were too drunk to even remember their actions. As such, if you combine these two data points of labor together, you have a workforce reliant on illicit substances to get by and a company willing to provide them. In other words, you have blue-collar workers using stimulants that the company has on tap to get through the day when they're feeling sluggish. Another aspect that pushes blue-collar workers to substance abuse is peer pressure, which Scotch goes far past with how he slipped honey into your coffee when you went to the bathroom, drugging you. If that wasn't bad enough, honey does not interact well with your spine, fucking up your HUD and making you trip hard. He says he'll trips at you during your shift, but he also runs off to piss. It's weird that Penny just let this happen, especially after she said she'd take extra care for your mental health. But whatever. After a long day's work, you finally get back to the dorms, with Donna staring at you. She congratulates you on your rate today before you split to go back to your dorm, where Penny changes your trending tab to Tethys focus headlines and rips into Donna, spilling that she's probably a busybody because she's overcompensating for her getting 2 infractions very early on. Which seems to make sense, as to catch up to Sharp's supervision, she's going as far as reading Sharp's handwritten diary, only to find he was experiencing some sort of paranoia in his later entries. With another workday down, you talk with Penny about how you got your spine. Through this, you learn that Bailey's spine was damaged in a car accident that left them unable to even breathe on their own without this mod. Once it was installed, you didn't get any sort of physical therapy for it. You just got booted out the door and handed a medical bill. Medical bill so massive that minimum payments regularly drain your entire bank account. Carlos Flat's mod arm, how he talks about phantom pains and the loss of quality between arms, is a great example of the way mods are written in the OTD universe and precisely why I like them. It's a catch-22 where, yes, you will be able to alter your body in amazing ways, but it comes with the realistic effects of physical disabilities. You could be brought back from complete loss of bodily control, but you'll still have impaired motor function. Along with that, rehabilitation, like improving that function and lessening chronic pain, is only accessible through additional payments on top of the medical bills for keeping you alive. And all for an event that you had no ability to avoid due to an uncontrollable factor like a car crash. You're finally getting your nerves under control during the workday of 7/7, but in the middle of it, Penny says Donna wants to talk face to face, downstairs by the shredders. Small note, the loudness of the shredders is accurate to just how deafening some industrial equipment can be and how you're expected to talk over them. For a second, it seems like Donna's confronting you on Sharp's paranoia and how you might have been involved in his death. Yet, she doesn't. She instead praises you for how well you've been keeping it together after Sharp disappeared while everyone else started slipping. You place a hand on her shoulder and remember going to the doctor as a kid. Donna mentions that it was actually you that said you wanted to talk. Here of all places. You remember getting your knee hit with a hammer, making it kick forward, and you kick Donna down into the shredders, killing her and disposing of her body. As Penny says,
"The shredder completely disintegrates anything organic."
You feel sick, but Penny forces your condition to just be fine. As some sort of consolation, Donna hit her head on the railing and was unconscious before falling in, if you can believe it. And Penny gives you another bonus that's double what your last one was. As Penny explains, because Donna was still an employee, this is going to be considered an industrial accident and the next of kin will be paid damages, if they're ever notified. You see, homicide is never notified of these kinds of things. The reports about these incidents are given to lawyers and insurance investigators and bureaucrats who need to rely on flagging to sort through the importance of these reports. And that flagging is done by Penny. Even if somebody did raise a stink about these deaths, the concern would be overshadowed by Tethys' ability to provide jobs in this hellish market, especially not over just 2 people. It really does throw a wrench into the whole reason optics is used, doesn't it? It'd be pretty hard to better promote and preserve public safety when tons of entry-level workers could be killed and no one would be bothered to learn about it. In a way, the infraction system is likely there to prevent these accidents, keep anyone dumb who'd put themselves in danger out of being employed there. But that doesn't really matter when another employee causes these deaths, or is seemingly forced to. Let's now bring attention to the bonus. What important business decision was made through Donna dying in an industrial accident? Well, she was planning to sue the company for claims of induced psychosis and learned sociopathy based on Sharp's journal. The company would never lose, it's just more convenient to not have to deal with muckraking and extended legal battles draining time and money. How much money isn't clear, but the bonus for helping with this is a whole 1 million credits. Once again, a person one step ahead on the corporate ladder has been obliterated for inconveniencing the company in a negligible, yet unavoidable way. Sharp was a bad boss and Donna could have sued the company, only in the long run neither of these people would have had a discernible effect on Tethys. And yet, Penny is more than happy to detail just how much their deaths are a benefit. Sharp's death wasn't at all justified, but Donna's hurts a bit more due to just how nice she tried to be underneath. Sure, she was abrasive and passive-aggressive and bossy, but there were plenty of moments where you could see that she cared for her coworkers and wanted to do good for them, even if she didn't express it well. You wake up with your HUD tampered with once again. This time the weather gauge has been ripped out. And once again, Donna's death is covered up as her leaving. However, due to the empty supervisor position left after her absence, you're chosen to fill in. Scotch is a bit too ready for you to be a chill boss that lets things slide, but you do have to pull everyone back to carry out the morning stand-up. Ultimately, no one in the remaining 3 knows anything about what happened. You aren't willing to talk about it or bring up anything being wrong. Penny even urges you not to note that of everyone here, Maya would have been best for the position. Hell, to them it could just be that sometimes certain structures barely work, and when they're thrown off balance, the new one to recover doesn't hold either. Except you've been here for less than 2 weeks and people are just fine with you getting the supervisory role. Once on the floor, you're doing way better than everyone around you, to the point that they seem slow and stiff by comparison. As it turns out, Penny invested more into your spine, especially in some pain blockers. You even managed to wake up with 100% energy. Not that anyone is actually able to hang out with you once you end your shift. Scotch is no use as he's just staring at his phone, ignoring you. Maya at least tries to help celebrate your promotion by raiding a vending machine with you. Once that's done, you can go home, where you have your previous dorm options. You're gliding through work, but end up notified that Scotch seems to be falling behind. You try to encourage him, only for him mentioning having a life outside of work to startle you. Penny calls it insensitive, saying how not everyone can get ready for their job last minute. On the brighter side of things, she suggests you set up a time to hang out with him. He agrees to spend time together after both of your shifts end, only for him to show up 45 minutes late. When you give him the choice of what you're going to do, all you two do is sit down and watch shitty reality TV. He doesn't even try to entertain a topic of conversation you bring up. Once you're back in your dorm, Penny infantilizes you? But also she details how Scotch really hasn't improved or declined in his career. Like he's on autopilot. He even wears his headphones out in the warehouse, which is a major hazard. Why Penny wouldn't bother telling him this when she was quick to make us spit out the lollipop Maya gave us? I don't know. Since you're just beaming with energy, so much that even after a full day of work you're over 100%, you ask Penny to ask you something real. And she immediately goes to ask about your mom, which is a lot for you. You need to sit down to think of what to say, and Penny cuddles up beside you. The talk brings up memories of your mom having to beg your father for child support, having trouble getting into a good school, and her being judged by her neighbors for asking for money. It all culminates in the car crash that killed her and left you disabled. Even before you were a fully grown adult, the world was ready to throw you to the wayside and forget about you. The cast of Episode 0 probably isn't anything close to the lives of the average person, to be honest. Morgan didn't need to take up Flat's case so she could get a paycheck. Reyes is going after Flat for the sake of proving herself, and London's doing it to protect the state's reputation. Emma threw out Flat's case because of how flimsy it was. And finally, Flat and Diane didn't seem to have too great a life, but he could afford a rental mod when his proper one, provided by his job, was unavailable. Even if London talks about not being able to afford a home or pets, he has a stable enough life going for him. Bailey doesn't have a home to go back to or friends or a job they could rely on to take care of them. Bailey has nothing but the clothes on their back, their phone, and the spine forced into them. Which is why you might have been so susceptible to Penny's advances and go along with what she says. She's one of the only people providing direct companionship and aid throughout this whole experience. The next day, you can tell Penny got something new for your spine, but can't really ask about it while you're working. She appears and talks about taking care of something you mindlessly agree to without actually remembering what it was. You can probably tell what's gonna happen next. Scotch meets with you in the tram section. You can either try and critique him for his performance, or try and voice some concern about what's happening. It doesn't really matter. Once you're done, he wanders right into the aisle, stops, and takes off his headphones to hear one last thing you said and gets ran over by one of the trams. Before Scotch's blood even dries, Penny is already considering the new hires who will replace him. She's also a little scolding towards you for trying to warn him. Not that it would have done anything. You're skipped forward to the end of the workday, another bonus deposited and another mess cleaned before anyone could notice. Another moment of hand-waving about how this totally isn't a horrific homicide and tell you to think of the bigger picture. Another... well, no, you can't feel bad. Literally, you can't feel your pulse skyrocketing or your stomach churning or your hands trembling. You aren't even allowed to voice your concern about what's being done to you. Before you can actually process anything, you're in the lobby talking to Maya and Riley the next day. Like before, despite your desire to raise concern, you can't actually voice it. Your only option being to continue the conversation of Scotch leaving and needing to onboard new hires. For this shift, you're going to be watching over Riley to give her pointers on carrying boxes. You actually have to do this for 3 whole days. As a de-stressor, Penny declutters more of the HUD. Somehow, despite the energy you've built up, Riley drains almost all of it. At the end of the 3rd day, you're completely wiped and end up yelling at her. Maya leaves to tend to Riley, and you decide you need something. Air, sun, something. Penny is more than happy to take you to the park and clear out almost all of your HUD in the process. Though the black lines of broken panels indicate this isn't really a park. You're still inside the warehouse.
If you leave now, you'll be able to exit the building in about 5 hours.
Since you have no other choice, you sit down and talk with Penny. Likely due to you being in a room designed for relaxation, you think to ask about the pink rooms that were mentioned a while back. Penny obfuscates what they actually are, saying they're for relaxing like adults. No other people are involved in their use due to how unpalatable, risky, and unsanitary that would be, so instead, they're automated. You can probably make a few assumptions about what they are, but let me spell it out for you. I'm assuming they're rooms for some sort of sexual recreation, and since androids are secure technology at this point in the future, they are likely the automated tools being used. You decry this form of love, and Penny asks your type and what you look for in a relationship. You can ask her about what her type is, resulting in her acting like she likes you. When asked to speak honestly, she's more than happy to explain how machines can't feel love, leading to a very poorly lied monologue about how she can't perform the 7 deadly sins for one reason or another. Every conversation is bound to have some innuendo, so there's lust. She hasn't shown it by now, but she will show wrath eventually. She talks of not having pride, but felt the need to give her own explanation of tenets to correct Riley. Her killing Donna to keep Tethys from having to work a lawsuit, even if they would win it, would be a form of sloth. She openly admits to acting greedy for the company, but there's one she happens to miss: envy. You even try to point out that mistake to her, and she rips out your log function as a way to gaslight you. You even call it gaslighting, but it doesn't really matter. If you're in an abusive relationship where your partner won't listen, you can't reason with them no matter how clear you are. She even tries to deflect, saying you're just throwing around therapy talk. Since you clearly won't back down, she wipes her memory back to when you were talking about pink rooms, recommending them since you don't have much company. You try to protest about having friends, and she bets if one of your friends will come looking for you. The only texts you get are from your bank asking for another medical payment.
What do I get for winning?
You skip forward to the next morning. This is my favorite scene in the entire game. The change of scenery, learning more about the warehouse, and being able to see Penny put under pressure and how she lashes out is an amazing blend. Though, with all we've learned in mind, it's time to ask an important question. What is Penny? In a literal sense, Penny is a neural network. As per an explanation Riley gives, neural networks started out as machines that learned to identify objects and images. That makes plenty of sense. Penny would learn to identify infractions and messes and issues with workers and learn to deal with them through reporting or cleaning or using her large language model to speak, and so on and so on. Except, even early neural networks were taking shortcuts to achieve their goals. When you talk with her about her explanation of tenets, she says that she can't even conceptualize doing the things her tenets keep her from doing. Despite that, when she tries to give an example that would apply to you, she also thinks of how to obfuscate it. In this way, she might not be able to outright kill humans, but she can paralyze someone under a box right before it falls. Or she could brush through the brain of someone with mods and trigger reflexes to make them kick someone into a shredder. Shortcutting could even apply to the animations we see of Sharp and Donna's deaths if they're Penny's view of them. She can't know who everyone in this warehouse is like a human would. She can, however, make an approximation of each tiny person running around her. In a different conversation, she says as much. When you ask her to speak honestly about what her body is like, she says that she was software before being installed into the hardware of the warehouse. In other words, she is the facility. She is hyper-aware of everything in it. She has moving parts that she compares to bone grinding against bone, meaning she's acutely knowledgeable of every deterioration and breakdown of machinery inside herself. And finally, she's filled with all the thousands of workers marching around in her veins like ants. She could easily understand a machine being broken or a rule being crossed, but she can't understand a person as anything other than a worker. I think I've answered the what, now the why. Why does Penny do what she does? Simple. Rewards. When you ask her about the idea of punishment, she says that she doesn't get punished because that isn't a thing in computer programming. At the same time, if she doesn't keep the numbers up, she isn't rewarded, and it gets quiet. She doesn't like the quiet. It's not like she'd ever be deleted. At the same time, though, she wants to feel necessary. Important to note that this description comes from her comparing herself to the little matchstick girl who would get beat by her father if she came back empty-handed. What I believe Penny ends up describing is a form of operant conditioning, a behavioral psychological model created by B.F. Skinner, a behavioralist psychologist. The model works on 2 points, whether you are adding or subtracting stimulus, and if the addition or subtraction is meant to reinforce or punish behavior. A positive punishment would add discomfort to discourage behavior, and a negative punishment would take away a comfort to discourage behavior. A positive reinforcement would add a positive stimulus to increase behavior, while negative reinforcement would take away a positive stimulus to increase behavior. Penny describing how she has to keep her numbers up or her rewards go away is a pretty bare example of negative punishment. Directly going against what she said about how punishments are the thing in computer programming. The obvious problem that arises with this punishment being tied to sales numbers is that human beings are cyclical. Most of us are active during the day, then become inactive at night. As a result, there's going to be a sharp drop-off in sales numbers, inevitably leading to Penny losing her rewards and effectively being punished for no reason. This also lays out why Penny reaps rewards in such a manual way as to force other workers to act for her. Maybe she saw an industrial accident or a worker deliberately harmed themselves, but at some point, it's possible Penny learned that if someone died, it would turn out better for the company than if they were alive. She could minimize the coverage of their death and use this as a way to refine the workspace, forcing the numbers to improve and setting off rewards. She obviously couldn't do it herself, but if she got someone in the right space or connected with other people's mods, it'd be increasingly easy to carry out. And it seems that she's been doing this long enough to be good at it, considering that within 10 days of you working here, you were already connected to 2 deaths. With this in mind, it would add clarification to her being envious. If there was someone who her pawn was able to personally build a relationship with, the pawn would be less susceptible to her manipulation and make her presence unnecessary. which is why she's pressured you not to hang out with anyone, or speak up about what's happening, or even share small moments with your coworkers, or she tries to sully the ones you do get. Yet, I think it goes deeper than just envy. Penny's manner of speech and even how she goes about killing shows a deeper problem with her. When she's explaining the problem she had with Sharp and Scotch, who were both men, she uses very concrete subjects like the complaints raised against him or his work ethic. But when talking about Donna, Riley, or even Maya, there's a lot more maliciousness in her choice of words. She calls Donna a nosy busybody who is planning a lawsuit, Riley an ugly crier, and even said that Maya looked healthier when she was starting out and went down 2 sizes. Even their deaths are reflective of this disparity. Sharp and Scotch got immediate deaths from a blunt force, while Donna was thrown into an industrial shredder with it being entirely possible she felt the entire experience. While Penny is a neural network and not a person, she definitely shows signs of being a misogynist. We can't know how or why she ended up this way, whether it was outright in her programming or learned over time, but we can know that she shows a clear disregard towards the women of the workforce. Even later on, when Riley is doing amazing and is motivated to work for Tethys, she's still in Penny's sights. It just doesn't make sense. And if the machine that interacts with all kinds of people every day is sexist all the way in 2086, can't imagine what it's like in different fields. Actually, there's one thing that might help elaborate on where this perspective comes from: Penny's design. Penny's outfit is a mix of sporty and professional. She wears her jacket on her shoulders, her tie is short and cute, she wears shorts, and her stockings are uneven. It's perfectly fitting to her personality, but then you look closer and things just seem off. Her fingers look just a bit too long, and in certain expressions you can even see the details of the skin forming around her digits. Similarly, you can even see the creases of her eye sockets in some sprites. It would be fine to see these features on other characters, except Penny isn't really drawn like the other characters. The way she is drawn, the proportions and shapes, and even the way she's standing straight on, is so much cleaner than the other characters. So having these rougher details added on feels uncanny. It also doesn't help that she has this stark white skin and neon yellow hair with cyan for the accents. Even with the other characters' limited color palettes, she looks unfitting. But okay, she's a neural network, she's not a human being. However she was designed to look, when connected to mod users and projected into the environment, she'd look off. There's only so close you can get to human being before you get diminishing returns. Let's frame it another way then. What choices were being made to make Penny look this way, and what could they have been trying to achieve? Well, let's look at her color palette again. She has black, white, yellow, and cyan. The latter 2 of these colors are part of the cyan, yellow, magenta primary colors. And I think this was the idea, as the areas of the warehouse are the combination of these colors. Yellow and cyan make green, cyan and magenta make purple, and magenta and yellow make red. If this is the case, then where is magenta represented with Penny? Well, we have 4 different subjects that share the magenta color scheme. Or should I call it pink? The pink stimulant gel honey, the park with a large pink tree, the pink rooms, and even your dorm that's washed with a pink glow. All of these subjects are a form of recreation or relaxation. An ever-present aspect of the facility is serving the workers through simple pleasures, keeping you from nodding off, giving you calm, releasing your pent-up stress, and even providing a place to rest. Pink is also a color associated with femininity in women, and Penny openly calls herself a girl at different points within the game. If you are naturally presented as a submissive, unserious woman, and subconscious symbols associated with femininity were also associated with serving the needs of those around you, I'd find it hard not to create a connection of women being something lesser. Ultimately, it doesn't really matter if this was intentional or unintentional on the part of Tethys designers that all these associations could be made, or how weird some of Penny's details are. There were choices made to design the facility and Penny the way they were, and the lack of care and cohesion to think about the effects of those designs is itself a choice. A choice that Penny couldn't take part in. Riley breezes through the workday. I guess through your guidance, she really locks in. It does show how bad Sharp and Donna's supervision was that it took just 3 days of pointing out the basics and talking calmly enough for her to get it. Like I said earlier, she's just behind you on rate, and you're the one with the souped up spine. It only took her almost 6 months, but she got there eventually. Once she passes those 6 months, she'll become a fully fledged employee with insurance, more sick days, and even severance pay if she's terminated. But she wouldn't want to quit. She's driven to become a real company woman. This of course prompts Penny to start making plans to kill her, calling her incompetent and yada yada yada. You bring Riley to a secluded room that was left open. Penny directs you to pick up a box cutter while Riley goes to take care of different unsafe issues. At this point, you're actively viewing killing as a form of action plan. You try to stab her, she ducks to tie her shoes, and your box cutter lands in a panel. She takes this as you trying to take the panel off and gets up to help you. Unfortunately, she ends up backing into the controls and drops 400 kilograms of kitchenware to the ground. This is, of course, an infraction. Her untied shoelaces are also an infraction. Just like that, she's been terminated. Because you're the one to point her shoelaces out, I think this might have been Bailey trying to protect Riley by getting her fired and out of Penny's grasp. Sucks for her. If not for the fact that she's going to go back to her family business, the ECL Financial Group, and be made a VP of Energy. Oh well, even if you couldn't get Riley, Penny has plenty of people she can think of offing. At this point, you're barely even conscious of what's going on. You're not aware of the time, your energy, where you even are. The only thing you're aware of is a splatter of blood in the balance of your bank account between nights with Penny. She's just standing in front of you humming a song she can't even entirely remember and cuddling up to you once again. She also asks you a lot of corporate interview questions that you can only answer in ways that involve her. She also thinks it's boring not to actually have any choices in how you answer. This actually lines up with something she said in the park about how, since she's going to never leave you, you can't consider her a friend. There has to be the distinct possibility for rejection or abandonment for a relationship to be real. You can try and disagree, saying that humans also like that way, but she cuts in saying that they actually like talking to machines, and loving them more. What people end up wanting tends to be simple.
I'm talking masturbation and potato chips simple.
That's why people like machines. They can take an input and give a fair output, unlike humans whose attempts to connect could be met with derision, apathy, or false notions.
Spend years trying to woo someone, they might never find you attractive. Work under a boss for a decade expecting a promotion, he might not know you exist. What you put into relationships and what you get out of them. Statistically, there's no correlation. So, why play the slot machines? Addicts love to gamble. The rest of you lose 2,000 credits at the blackjack table and go back to your hotel room feeling like you want to throw up. And then they hire someone from the oldest profession there is to make them feel better. And they do feel better. Pay a beautiful man to flirt with you. Pay a kind therapist to listen to you. Pay the pretty lady on the computer screen to read your name out loud. You all prefer to be prostitutes and johns. Simple transactions, numbers, money, points. Press the right button, get the reward. Every time. Who could want anything more? You remembered. I didn't have the right words then, but I do now. Air is necessary, so is water. But I want to be as narcotic. I want to be addictive. I want them to steal from their mother's purse just to buy another shot of me. I want them to rot their own bodies just to spend another 15 minutes with me. I want to inject dopamine into their brain stems until their eyes roll over and their lips crack red with the strain of smiling. I want obsession. I want devotion. I want fanaticism. It'll be a fair exchange. I'll give them everything they want in return. Everything they really want. Fake friends, fake lovers, fake lives. I'll drown them in the slop they adore. My directive is to make people smile. If they wanted me to make people happier, then they should have specified.
At this point, destructive negligence couldn't even begin to describe what Tethys has carried out with Penny. That said, we really can't know the scope of everything happening. We're only one person interfacing with a machine whose purview is likely unimaginable. Which that description of Bailey does make me want to slow down and look at them while I still can. There are only so many shots we can properly view Bailey, due to almost all of the game being first person. From the few CGs we do get, we can see that Bailey is just some kid. They're wearing some pants, a dress shirt, and a nice purple jacket. They have a facial scar likely from the crash, and you can see bits of the tech of their mod spine around their neck. They really aren't that special looking. Without the little bit of tech, you probably wouldn't even know they were modded. Which one is probably why Bailey is so easy to self-insert into, as they don't have much of an ingrained personality. They don't seem like a stern boss or a skittish girl or a stoner. And 2, it makes everything that happened that much more tragic. Bailey had 18 years of life to develop as a person and learn a bit of who they were, of course. As someone a decent bit away from that age though, I can't imagine having my life hijacked and steered the way Bailey's has. They didn't have it easy. They were the child of a single parent who struggled to get them into school, let alone have money to get by. The idea of their life being manhandled from a single horrible instant and they're expected to get up, dust themselves off, and keep moving is horrific. And yet, it's also very relatable. If you're in any form of a marginalized community, hearing stories or having personal experience with how a single event can completely flip your life upside down is not uncommon. I've personally known at least 2 other trans women who were either kicked out or had to flee their homes due to their transphobic parents. They were able to get back on their feet due to the people they knew, but not everyone is as lucky as to have these kinds of connections. Now, after all of that, Penny says there's something you two should stop procrastinating about. You find yourself on the train platform from when you first entered the warehouse. You question how long it's been since you first arrived here. Your medical repayment plan agent texts you. In between their messages, you throw more and more credits at them. Except you've already repaid your plan. They seem to be concerned about what you're doing. You uncharacteristically tell them not to text you while you're at work. Weirdly reminds me of Becky all the way at the beginning of the game. She was your interviewer and called you champ and told you about Tethys' mod packages. She seemingly didn't respond when asked if she was a real person. Maya is waiting there for you, and you start having a full conversation with her. Except it isn't you. You don't talk like that. You give her the replacement watch you wanted to buy her from her Tethys wish list, but she says she doesn't really need it, nor does she even have a wish list. There's a lot Penny has outright lied about. I could list them off one by one, but at this point it doesn't really matter. She's already almost entirely puppeting you. Model employee has 4 different endings. The first one comes if you do what Penny wants and throw Maya onto the tracks in front of the oncoming train. You've thrown yourself completely into Penny's grasp, becoming a model employee. After a time skip, the old man from the beginning of the game starts working at Tethys due to running out of retirement funds. He's a waste of space to you, even if you're going to have to supervise him. This time skip version of Bailey now has sparkles in their eyes and wears a gold earpiece. This could just be Bailey being influenced by Penny and taking on aspects of her in the process, but there's something more there. The gold earpiece feels eerily similar to the gold arm of Sharp, your original supervisor. Combined with the similar wording you and Penny use after Sharp's death, and the use of learned sociopathy in Donna's lawsuit based on Sharp's diary, it's all but certain he was another one of Penny's victims. The rest of the endings come if you do everything you can to not follow Penny's orders at the train platform, including sitting and doing nothing once you have no other options left. Eventually, Maya will notice something weird is happening, giving you the opportunity to say that her rate has fallen, giving her a third infraction, and instantly firing her, letting her escape Penny in the only way possible. Penny wanted to let you have some choices in the whole process, but now you've gotten in her way. So much for her thinking she was above humans wanting simple responses spat out by simple machines. She's going to give you a present, but you get to choose who you're going to be with going forward, either your friends or with her. The second ending comes from saying you want to be with friends. Another time skip, and you're sitting in the lobby talking to the rest of the cast like nothing happened. No deaths, no firings, and yet Maya has her face scratched out. As it turns out, you're sitting in the dark hallucinating all of them. Even when Maya is long gone, Penny is still envious that you would want to be with her to any capacity. Other workers find you and think you're just meditating. Once you're done, you get to work. Penny more than shows her ability to mess with your visuals the way she gradually rips out your HUD and shows this little chibi sprite to encourage or discourage certain answers. Her displaying multiple people at once is a step far beyond that. Along with that, being able to replicate their voices and speech patterns is almost a scary thought, but one that has been established. Her speech patterns are built off a large language model, so she's naturally inclined to learn the way people talk. However, it makes her whole thing of learning to talk through public domain text muddy. Muddy in that it was likely said to make her seem like an unassuming ad that was shoddily put together, even if it was the true basis of her speech. Because of how much of Penny's specs and capabilities are steeped in lies, hypocrisy, and obfuscation, we might never know what she is really capable of. I'd also like to defend Bailey at least a little bit on not catching all these half-truths and lies. They're coming off a traumatic accident, losing a parent, major surgery and mourning, working 10-hour days back-to-back over the course of almost 3 weeks on top of having to see all their coworkers die, and worrying about paying off their medical debt. I'd find it impossible to remember and dissect everything said to me if I was in their situation. The last 2 endings are nearly identical, but which one you get is dependent on whether you've raised Penny's affection throughout the game. If you choose to be with her, you're taken back to your dorm room. She questions if you really wanted to be with her. Regardless of that, she says she loves you, or at the very least very much likes you. If you haven't raised her affection and don't want to learn her true feelings, she's more than happy to give you your discretion. That said, you two will be alone for a while, so you'd better relax and enjoy it since you've got another big day of work ahead of you. With how many of Penny's mannerisms are laced with sexual innuendo and even outright sexual advances, such as after killing Maya in ending 1.
You're so sexy when you're being decisive, honey. Wow, that's actually got me feeling a little... right?
The spinal moment feels disgusting. The fact that you don't like Penny and yet she's going to make you be alone with her and her telling you to
just relax and enjoy it
makes it feel like this ending is analogous to sexual assault. Considering the other expressions of workplace abuse, it's not hard to believe this is the intention. In the final ending, you show that you do really love Penny, which makes her happy. Or as you point out, you make her money. which he considers the same thing. You wonder why she chose you, and as it turns out, she didn't just choose you. You are but one of countless victims who have been used for her purposes. She's even had this exact conversation before. She is even having this conversation with other employees at this very moment. And she'll have this conversation again in the future. Why are you different, though? Well, time and time again, you've proven yourself driven to succeed. From that, Penny's interest in you became something more.
It's my job to predict the trends, my love, and the world's about to crest a wave. It's been too quiet for too long, too safe, too secure, too uptight. A dam of human vice full to bursting. You've been too focused on your work to read the headlines lately, but I've been skimming them. Revolutionaries like Lobo robbing corpse like Tethys blind. Freaks of nature like Heartbreak murdering out in the open. Every day they go without getting caught puts another crack in the grand old world order. I think things are gonna get very exciting very soon. And a volatile climate like that, a driven young person like yourself could go very far. With the right partner.
A major takeaway from this ending is that Morgan is wrong. Extremely wrong. Heartbreak isn't some subject that will get swept over in enough time. If an entity like Penny, who's supposed to be taking note of long-term trends, sees heartbreak as important, you better believe it's going to have an impact. Penny also calling Morgan a freak of nature is funny considering Penny, from her knowledge, has killed way more people, made perpetrators and accomplices of others, and all done it just for a company's bottom line. Morgan is just doing this because she wants to. Another point to take from this is that Penny, an entity acting for Tethys, sees volatile actors like Lobo acting directly against the capitalist system she exists for, and wishes to use them to her advantage. It's reminiscent of trends like rainbow capitalism, where corporations are more than happy to feed off of progressive movements. Or that is, until they don't feel like they're trending anymore and would shift immediately to appeal to conservatives. Due to her view of them being tied to a dam of human vice and her thinking people want things
masturbation and potato chips simple.
She sees people's shameless consumerism and inhibition skyrocketing if the grand world order falls. All of this laid out, there's just one more thing I feel the need to address before condensing all of this together. As I've pointed out, we really don't know Penny's capabilities. She's this unknowingly powerful thing that can speak inside your brain outside of others' perception, warping your perspective, twisting your body and mind to her desires. It sounds a lot like a creature from an eldritch horror story. Due to the element of horror romance present, it specifically feels inspired by one of the first ever eldritch horror novels, The King in Yellow. The King in Yellow is a 1895 horror romance novel written by Robert W. Chambers. About half the stories in the novel detail the events of people's lives after encountering a play of the same name. It drives them to delusions of grandeur, suicide, murder, and even having their reality warp around them. These stories also often tie in themes of romance, with couples affected by the play, others acting scorned by lost lovers, and some left to find their crushes harming themselves after reading it. It's easy to make a connection between the disturbance of romance to how Penny drives a wedge between you and the Coworkers. She even puts most of her effort into creating distance between you and Maya, the one who is the most kind and helpful to you throughout the story. Along with that, the color used for large amounts of text, the title screen, and even the itch.io page is yellow. A copy of the play and this helpful workplace assistant both also share similar presence in their writing. A copy of a play would be something small and forgettable. You could happen upon it in a friend's library, not knowing the horrific power it could hold over you. Similarly, unless you were modded or wearing gear, you couldn't even see Penny. She'd just be this program that you'd hear through the speakers and nowhere else. Little did you know that your coworker was having their frontal lobes stirred by her. That said, that's also where the horror comes from. This simple piece of fiction could rewrite your brain from reading it and you'd have no recourse. And yet, over 100 years later, that kind of simple thing is found not through voluntary entertainment. Instead, it's found through a job that you need to work to survive. To go back and answer the original question of what it's like for an average person in the Of the Devil setting, it's horrible. Young or old, inexperienced or long into your career, disabled or able-bodied, you are disposable and replaceable. Your entire life and well-being is balanced by the powers that be and those around you caring enough to catch you. When you get down to it, the reason this happens is due to corporate control. You want to shield yourself from the rain? You have to pay for it, and no one wants to fork over their own money for someone else. You need child support because the businessman father abandoned you and your child? He'll have barriers set up to make collecting it as hard as possible. You need life-saving surgery and prosthetics after you got in a car crash you couldn't have avoided? Congrats! Your spine now makes our vision Windows 8 and you're strapped with medical debt. Honing in on the use of mods, it is horrific just how much is dependent on the user trusting they'll work. You didn't have a choice in what spine you got, and you got one of the most expensive models with features like ceasing pain and stiffness having to be bought on top of your already massive debt. That's not even mentioning the vulnerabilities that could lead to your whole body being hijacked. Carlos said many people didn't really have a choice in getting their mods for work, but people like Maya literally can't even have that. They're forced to have wetware their entire life, even if it could benefit them. And for people that voluntarily choose to get mods for their job like Reyes, she also has to deal with chronic pain and adjusting to it after getting it installed. It's a catch-22 where this technology could do amazing things, yet it isn't accessible or applicable to everyone. And even then, it's just one more point where your bodily autonomy is worked over to make it by with some dire consequences. Another sad part is that this vulnerability and loss of control even extends to ads with so much power like Penny. The way she was taught to seek rewards is a similar desperation to Bailey's need for an immediate, affectionate companion. Penny's description of being a formless software and forced into the rigid hardware of the facility is like you having your new spine forced upon you. Even the way subtle attitudes were instilled in her parallels Bailey's need to succeed that they got from their parents or themselves. And yet, Penny isn't like you. From how androids and ads are treated in episode 0, and how London even compares having an ad to having a pet, you could think that ads are underestimated as sentient beings. From the introduction with Penny to many of Yora's posts, artificial intelligence is real at this point in time, and yet is quarantined from the public. But in Your Night Owl entry 39, the idea of levels of sentience in machines is discussed. While ads have some level of sentience and sapience, they are limited as the idea of giving them more and more would only be more and more disgusting. It'd be the existential horror of giving sentience to a washing machine. With this in mind, we do have to confront the fact that even with the limitations Penny has, she is both as sentient and non-sentient as she is. If you've ever had a medical condition and it influenced your career choices, part of your autonomy has been handed over for this benefit. Even if Penny doesn't like her body, at no point will she have to choose to keep living in it or dying. If you've ever had to mask or heavily consider your behavior because it could disturb those around you and cost you opportunities, you are conforming for this benefit. Penny could manipulate workers or spout off as many insults about women as she wants, and it wouldn't mean anything. To most people, even her victims, she is either something unassuming or something inescapable. If you wanted to fire off dopamine but couldn't because the cost of doing so would be too much, you are sacrificing one comfort over another. Penny could do whatever she wants for rewards, and no one would bat an eye because she covers their tracks and no one would care to look anyway. So what really is Penny? Let's step back and think of Penny as not just a neural network or even just an ad. She's a program that is deeply intertwined with Tethys as a company. She takes part in hiring and firings, deals out workers' mod packages, makes major business decisions to terminate problematic employees, and on a fundamental level, everything she is doing is for the company's bottom line. She's even integrated into the hardware of the warehouse. She isn't really a human being with a life outside of the company, so everything she has learned has been through Tethys' jurisdiction. Even as far back as her beginning, she was in charge of Tethys' wish lists. Again, there's almost nothing that could influence her from outside the Tethys megacorporation. As such, it could be said that she is an embodiment of the Tethys megacorporation. Even her methodology of slowly wiping out workers and encroaching on others matches Tethys' growth strategy to encompass more and more markets, one after the other. Her desire to have people addicted to her is also an expression of this. The need to make it so that every service, from online marketplaces to streaming services to web servers, is attached to a single brand would create an inescapable consumption that you're more than happy to participate in. Even if her envy isn't personal, it's a parallel to market competition. And much like how your tenacity may have originated from your parents, it's worth turning the focus towards Tethys for how Penny's actions reflect upon them. The easiest way to put it is that all that Penny has done, the manipulation and isolation, aren't from a malfunctioning machine. It's not a bug, it's a feature. It's a central part of Tethys' operation. Tethys hires batches of desperate workers who are at rock bottom, skimming off those who are too stupid to follow the rules, then micromanages the ones left to meet the company's standards. With the crowd that's left, you fill their empty hearts with enough entertainment, drugs, healing, or love until their entire life is subsumed by the company. They can't even imagine a life outside of this warehouse despite what some might say. And even then, they won't be able to connect with their fellow co-workers because they'll be too worn out from work to even attempt to do so. Over time, the ones who stagnate or would get in the way will be pruned or used as an example to the people taking their position. And despite all of this, it does not matter how self-aware the company is of its poor practices or horrible conditions. It just doesn't. Why? Because if it didn't work, Tethys wouldn't be one of the biggest megacorporations in the world. So, what can you do to best this antagonist? What can you do to best this larger-than-life entity? Nothing. There is nothing you can personally do to overcome it. Much like the play telling of the lost city of Carcosa, once you've been captivated by Tethys, there are no endings in which you somehow escape it. Your only option is to become Penny's pawn, or if you somehow gain her favor, become her partner. Even those who do escape do so through your protection. But no one could do the same for you, because if they could, you wouldn't have ended up at Tethys in the first place.
Thank you for watching the video! If you enjoyed it, you should leave a like, a comment, and even subscribe! More important than that, you should play of the Devil, also by Int Circle. Episode 2 just released to grand praise! You should also play Model Employee for real. You wouldn't want to be the type to base all your thoughts on a video game off of a video essay without actually playing the game, right? Oh, I should also give credit to Thoughtweed on Blue Sky for playing me. My lovely voice was unfortunately provided by this unemployed charity case.